Quilts are as much a social outlet as a creative outlet. And they've become a way that women can express concern and feeling on a variety of issues.
People are excited about quilts. It shows the history of their family, and there is something tangible that mom or grandma or sister or somebody back in Europe did, and here it is, and isn't it wonderful? And it is wonderful. There are many treasures.
I love it all. The journey's wonderful, but I think the destination, because I want to get on to the next one.
I just make them to make them. I don't make them for a particular reason. I just love making them. And I have to see how it's going to turn out.
The history of quilts is rich, varied, and influenced by many different ethnic groups and quilters. Throughout time, quilts have had different purposes: warmth, protection, household decoration, and therapy. Some are nothing more than utility quilts used for warmth and bedding. Others are considered artwork and are showcased for admiration. Today, some quilt owners travel from quilt show to quilt show, seeking approval of their creations from their peers in the quilting world. Many win awards and are recognized both here at home and across the country. Some quilts have great monetary value, while others have sentimental value. Some are even historically significant. Quilts can tell a story, and many are family heirlooms passed down from generation to generation. Quilting can be traced back to ancient Egypt and China. Quilts are defined as 3 layers of fabric that are quilted together to hold them in place.
It was used in the Orient as a protection. If you put enough layers of fabric, it'll stop an arrow going through. And so, particularly if that's silk. Silk is such a strong fiber that quilts made from silk were worn as armor before there was metal. And so that came with the Mongolians over to Mideast. And one of the things it did when the Crusades went to the Mideast, they brought back quilting to Europe. The Crusaders used it as padding between their skin and their armor. Well, when you bring it back to Europe, now there's a whole bunch of things you can use it for.
There's evidence in some sculptures or drawings from ancient Egypt that there are people who are wearing what might be quilted garments. So that's a little harder to say with specificity, whether that's accurate or not.
Probably our biggest influence in the United States was from Great Britain.
The quilt as we know it in America, dating back to the colonial days, was mainly created and used out of necessity for bed covers and warmth. The earliest American quilts were so connected to everyday life of early day settlers, few records of them exist.
We need to remember that England and Europe had quilting, but the Americans brought it to a whole new level, really developed it, really used it, really made it part of the culture.
The problem with studying textiles is they don't last forever. They get used and worn out.
When it comes to the history behind quilt making in America, there's a difference between nostalgia and reality. The idea of colonial day women sitting around the fire or in groups stitching quilts is a myth.
You have to think about how readily available were materials then, and what was being manufactured or made in the United States and what was being imported. The idea of colonial women sitting by the fireside and stitching little pieces of fabric together that are reclaimed from clothing is pretty much a myth. We have to wait until we get the Industrial Revolution, where we start to mass produce cloth, where then we can begin to cut it up into little pieces and make fancy designs. So here's an example of where the quilt history follows technology and economics and commerce.